Hi, everybody. Welcome to Under the Brand. I am your host, Valerie Jennings. Today, I am excited to sit down with Mark Mazzarese. He has 30 years of luxury brand experience and a fifth generation luxury jeweler. He is going to clue us in on what is trending today. We're also going to talk about brands that are faking it and what's gone wrong. Today, everybody seems to want to join the luxury space, but what does it really take to be a luxury brand? In the last year, we've seen some big mistakes and we've also seen some remarkable transitions. So, Mark, thank you for joining us today. Please introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your luxury background with our listeners and viewers today.
Oh, thanks, Valerie. It's really great to be on here. I've really enjoyed your podcast. I spent the last 30 years within specifically the jewelry industry and have evolved my experiences into becoming a private jeweler. So I managed a multi-store family business for many years and then transitioned out of that and currently work as a private jeweler for my select clients and also as a U.S. agent for some Italian and French manufacturers. But I also work as a consultant within the watch and jewelry industry to help manufacturers kind of understand the U.S. market, but also work with direct to consumer as well.
You know, the landscape keeps shifting, and it's like, what is luxury today? Right? Like we've seen fake luxury, right? With the Payless shoes pop up that had everybody thinking that they had influencers and fashionistas and they're like, these shoes are so high quality. I would spend 500 plus, blah, blah, blah. And then they let them know at the end, hey, this is Payless. And they were stunned. How is this possible? Is this part of the social media movement with perception is reality? Who are the fakers and what's really a luxury brand today?
Well, I think you nailed it. I think it's all about the perception and what foot they put forward and how they're presenting themselves. And I'll tell you, even within the jewelry and watch industry, there are so many fakers in the sense that even some of the big watch brands, very few of them are manufacturers. Pieces are made for them. They may do some final assembly. They may help with some aesthetic designs, but a majority of their budgeting goes to not to R&D, but to marketing. So, they're marketing companies with a product is what they become.
Well, as a consultant for luxury, what do you tell your luxury brands that they need to do to embrace luxury? What is the DNA of luxury today?
Well, I think primarily it's knowing what your brand represents and what you want your brand to be first and foremost. You're not going to be all things to all people. And as soon as you narrow that down and you know what you want to be or what you want to portray yourself as, that starts the journey. From there, I would say the product has to be of a certain caliber. If you're looking to target on the luxury side, you have to have more than just a design aesthetic. You've got to have the quality of craftsmanship, but you also have to have an intelligent and let's just say a backstory that makes sense, that kind of grips people and gets them involved. Because a big part of the luxury story is exactly that. It's a story. The luxury feel is exactly the story. But it also evolves into how you treat your clients from every single touch and every single communication. So diligence is a big part of it and consistency.
Yeah, these luxury brands that are really doing it right, who would be on your list of brands that wow, they've got the great backstory, they have quality, they've got the right price point. Which brands come to mind when you really think about real luxury products today?
I think in a wider scope of products to where more people can relate, not getting in the weeds with, let's say, on the jewelry side, but brands like Mercedes-Benz, Audi, I think they know their clients, they know what they're going after. They don't try to be all things to all people, and again, that's a strong point, is knowing where you're going and knowing who you're serving. And I think from there, they try to make sure that their experience as luxurious and as special as the product.
Audi specifically has really stepped up its luxury appeal, and they've made big inroads with that audience. What do you think they did that got them to that point? What did they do right in that they were able to transition the way they have?
I think Audi's biggest point, just being a little bit of a car file and an auto file, I think the advantage that Audi saw was they took the negative portions of what a Mercedes client might say about their brand being maybe stuffy. So the average 30 or 40-year-old might look at Mercedes as kind of a stuffier brand. They took a different approach, made their brand. They went for a little more sexiness. They went for the technology. So everything you touch, everything you see, but they also did it with a value in mind. So they made sure that they were competitive, but they also delivered a value, which, a lot of luxury companies have lost sight of. Now, they feel like it's a bad thing to be a good value.
Do you think that the more expensive a brand is, the more luxurious it is? Is that the perception of the consumer? Is it more exclusive?
Well, yeah, that's the obvious, right? The price point builds the exclusivity. You look at a brand like Rolex, for instance, which everybody knows about. Rolex makes great product. They're expensive, but it's definitely not something that's exclusive. They make over 1 million watches a year for the world. There is demand for it, but it's not something that is rare and unique.
So, how do they get away with that? Is that just history? Is that just brand equity built up over
Exactly.
decades of time?
That's exactly it. And a lot of these brands will kind of ride their own coattails and they kind of follow what they've laid down, and sometimes they have to retell their story. There's new generations that come up, and you get a brand, let's say like Coach, that today is a great American brand, but as far as a luxury brand, it's kind of taken a few notches down, maybe because of the availability, maybe just the cachet of the brand itself being more available and the price points of it. So it's a little bit easier to acquire. But its history was really to be some of the finest saddle makers in the world. And that's where they built their primary reputation. So I think a lot of these brands, yeah, I think a lot of these brands really go on their laurels and their history, but they don't do a very good job of telling their story to the next generation. That's where we see things fall off.
That's a great point. Economic accessibility has changed too, right? We have more billionaires than we've ever had. So we're seeing people in different economic spending patterns that can afford more luxury. There's also, man, I've read a bunch of studies lately that even the younger generations are financing expensive luxury experiences so they can feel that even in a younger era that maybe we didn't experience. So there's definitely a shift. I'm sure it's coming from Instagram and TikTok and the influencer mindset. But while we're talking about cars, because I also love cars, and worked in automotive marketing for about 15 years. I can't resist bringing up Jaguar and the disaster with their branding. And that this is a politics aside, like it's not a political issue, but they trashed their loyal audience with this brand relaunch that they did. Like, what if we look at that example that played out and the stocks plummeted? What is the lesson there for other, I mean, not just luxury brands, but brands in general? Once you build up a legacy brand, to make such an extreme pivot like that, what does that do to a brand? And when might that work? Or should nobody ever do that again?
Well, I think you just answered the whole question, but it's ironic you bring up Jaguar because I just saw an article this morning that in the month of April, they sold 40 cars.
Oh,
40 cars for Jaguar
wow. Wow.
in the country. I think it was in the country. In the U.S., it was how it was determined. They sold 40 in the U.S. I mean, that's one car lot. So I mean, I think that's a situation where they had a perception of themselves or who their client was and thought they had such a small perception of who their client was that they wanted to go from there. What's ironic with Jaguar is it tends to be a more mature brand. It is the clientele, they have a LGBTQ crowd as far as their fandom, and partially because of the fit and finish of the product and the attention to detail. You don't have to be into engines and superchargers and whatnot to enjoy the brand. It really is the presentation and just the fineness of what they make. And a lot of people in that community really enjoy that aesthetic of it. And it's also a brand that something else that had some cachet was it's not your normal, let's just say, pedestrian brand. It's something that you don't see everywhere. They're pretty special and you have to have an appreciation for it. They are a bit temperamental as far as the engineering, but from that, most of the people like the styling. That's what they're going after. And I think they probably took that marketing research too far. And I think the approach that they took was, now they already announced that they wanted to do all electric by 2030, I believe. So they're already moving that way. But I think, and again, politics aside, I think they took it and thought that they were leading the pack in the way they were going. But I think they also realized very quickly that that's not going to reach a lot of clients well. So they're catering to a very small percentage. And the new prototype, I mean, like you said, the new prototype was very cool, very sexy. The advertising they used to roll it out was very strange for that brand.
Yeah.
You've got a traditional British brand, that has a strength with hand workmanship, one of a kind, very bespoke, and they really did not present that side of the brand.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And then you've got Payless launching a pop-up and convincing people that they have a luxury product. So can anybody join the luxury category today with the right perception? What do you
Well,
think?
I think if you've got enough money to throw at it, you can create a brand around any product that you want, and you can build it into something of a perceived value, excuse me, luxury, not a perceived value, but a perceived luxury even. And it's a matter of showing the aesthetic of it, but it's also a matter of giving off an air of exclusivity, an air of specialness, whatever it is that you want to set it apart is what
Yeah.
it's going to be. The Payless example you gave was really interesting. I think they had influencers that were really floored. And when it comes to shoes, you just do something a little bit different. You don't need a signature. They didn't by any means have a red bottom or anything special on them. They were just very nicely made shoes. And it also goes to show that sometimes some of the private label, smaller manufacturers that aren't so worried about their brands make some of the best products.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So let's switch gears and talk about T10 Bespoke. And that
Yeah.
product is luxury. It's also tech. It's an experience. It's in that price point. So that's an interesting product. Can you first just describe what it is and how you're involved with it? And then we can kind of talk about the branding around it and packaging.
Well, a few years ago, my friend Bert Prelogger came to me and said, I need some help with some precious metals and some insight on manufacturing some pieces. And when he showed me the concept of what he was making, it was pretty amazing. And as we worked together, what his vision for this product was a combination of an atelier product, a handmade bespoke product, and something that was technologically very advanced and becomes what he sees as an everyday staple item of use. And what he did was he combined some great materials that you don't normally get. You don't think of high-end jewelry as being technologically advanced or being utilitarian also at the same time. So he's figured out how, and he's actually, this is a whole new concept in the market that he's coined as the in-ear computer.
Yeah.
So, don't call them earpieces because that just, they're way too robust for what
Or
they do.
earbuds, right?
Or
Yeah,
earbuds. Yeah, no,
they're in a
don't do that.
um
But it's a whole new category.
it is, and I tried it out last week, right? I went to see Bear, and my reaction was, I feel like I'm in an alternative universe. Like it stimulates your brain and your senses because the audio literally feels like it's living inside you, right? And it's amazing that he's been able to create that in such a small device. But on the other side of this product is the unique customization of the design, which is what makes it that jewelry piece. Is that right? Is that how
Correct.
you, yeah.
Correct. Whereas most companies, when you get these rechargeable earbuds, most of those are just an ugly plastic case that you don't want to show. And his is designed around specifically the charger, and it's made to be a decorative piece of jewelry, whether you're wearing it on a watch chain or whether a woman's wearing it as a pendant, but it's meant to be a decorative piece. And the other unique thing that he brings to the market with these products is the fact that you're combining an electronic product which is normally mass produced off the shelf, one for one. You grab it and go. These are all bespoke. So each one, and literally it's called T10 Bespoke, is the collection, but they're one for one designed. You can pick your metal base, you pick your ceramic trim, and you pick your skin color. And then you pick the ceramic also for the actual inserts for your ears. So you can pick that color also. So there's a lot of customization that is just unheard of to be able to have high high level technology also married to it. And this was something that has been somewhat trying on the retail side. Most entities that handle B2C business don't really understand how to handle a special product like that that's made custom. And his success is coming out of going directly to the consumer. So literally get online. He's got a great app that configures the piece the way you want. So you kind of get it and visualize it the way you like it based on all the possibilities. And then Bear calls you directly to say, okay, we've got this metal with this color. I really like this. Here's a consideration I would tell you. Tell me what you're going to use it for. Tell me this. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And he may tailor it for you a little differently. Or he may give you some sort of information about the piece that you didn't know that what its capabilities were. Because I promise you, even after 4 or 5 years of working with Bear on this project, every time I talk to him, I learn something new about the product. It's just so robust and the capabilities are tremendous. He's got, no exaggeration, something like 12 or 14 patents that apply to this single product. And he's a musician. His background's as a musician. And he started with a very high quality Klipsch monitor as the main driver. So he had sound that he was able to take to the next level and then throw in that technology with it. So he is a expert at having the right partnerships.
Yeah, no, he's very talented, and the level of customization and how he's capturing each person's individuality and then bringing that through in the design is pretty incredible. But with all this specialty, creates a very niche audience, right? And you and I have talked about this, like, so what is this audience, do you think, Mark? Is it jewelry? Is it tech? Is it audio experts or people that love sound? I mean, Bear talked about the hi-fi lounges, right? So in this example, we're seeing a lot of areas of luxury expand, but in that, it makes branding difficult, right?
This is really almost a textbook study in how consumers can buck trends. And I say that in a sense that when we first started out marketing this product, we came up with a demographic and a sort of client type that fit the niche. Not unlike what I do for jewelry or watches for my private clients, very specifically, whether it be certain brands, certain levels of finish that they're looking for particular brands. It also crosses over. What we saw was crossover to more of the automotive enthusiasts. A lot of those guys who are highly into their automobiles like the customization, they like the technology, they like that whole relationship, and also the exclusivity of it. That's the biggest key with this is you've got something that's very high quality, very different on the market, but it's also very exclusive just to you, not just to anybody else, but it's your piece. And more recently, we're seeing that trend being really bucked because what we've discovered was as this is getting out to more people, we have people who are not meeting our parameters whatsoever with regards to income level, with regards to hobbies, with regards to just the overall demographic. And so these are people that not even are outliers. They weren't even considered to be that they would be targets for the product. And that's been the most interesting discovery. It really is not just audiophiles, not just of special items. It's just what we're discovering. It's people who like things that are different and custom.
Yeah, eclectic, that desire to have something that nobody else has. That's a conversation starter, right? Um,
And eclectic, one thing to consider, an eclectic client does not necessarily point to a socioeconomic level. You can have an eclectic taste and have that and be within any range.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And that makes it difficult to build brand personas than to do your marketing. But these new categories are bubbling up, and it's definitely takes more patience to build them out and figure out how you're gonna market and present them. So just kind of in closing, for people who are watching this that maybe want to jump in the luxury space, can they fake it for a while, or do you think the truth will come out even if they pour lots of money into the perception? Eventually, does quality matter these days? Nobody seems to even know the difference between AI, what's real and what's, fake. In fact, I was told by my paid media team that an interview that I did similar to this, people were putting comments that I was AI. So where
I don't know if
everything's
that's a
very,
compliment
I
or
don't, I said the same thing. Is that a compliment or an insult? But regardless, everybody, is confused. What is real? What looks real to somebody might look fake to somebody else. So have we entered a new era of just all artificial, or is there some degree of authenticity left in luxury?
I think luxury is subjective. I think quality is subjective. And it's subjective to the end user. What I consider high quality, you may look at and not consider good enough, and vice versa. So it's a very subjective term by any means. And when you try to market it that way, again, you know, is Yeti's, let's say, for instance, nothing special, but a brand like Yeti has built up their brand recognition as being a quality brand. Is it because it's expensive? Is it because it's just well made? What do people like about the brand? Everybody has a different approach to it, but it's not something that is so groundbreaking and so unique. So I think a lot of brands have figured out that their message and their marketing is number one. And they're putting that even above the merchandise itself. Because to an approach, you can almost build a brand and not even have a product.
Right.
You can you can fit the product in later. I mean, so many of these brands that you look at, you see some of these ads on TV and you don't know if it's a drug ad, you don't know if it's a shoe ad, you don't know if it's a, some kind of random wearable ad, you don't know what it is. So they go on a perception, they're going for that perception of a quality product, perceived quality, and they kind of fill in the gaps. I think the biggest part of a luxury product is how they treat their consumers after the sale. And I think how they represent themselves within not just the initial rollouts or the initial designs, but it's also how the company evolves over the years. What's their longevity? What's their willingness to stick to their design? Maybe it's a design element that they've gone on. What's their willingness to stick through it? Or do they, the second it doesn't feel like it's the right fit, do they dump it? Are they strictly numbers driven or, well, revenue driven, or are they strictly onto the brand itself and want to perpetuate the brand? Many times it takes a little bit for people to become accustomed to something. 10 years ago, you wouldn't spend $40 on a metal cup. Today, it's kind of normal and accepted.
Right.
So,
Right.
and we're seeing that along the lines of many products where you're seeing a lot of very high-end AI jewelry ads for generic jewelry brands that you would assume are going to be very high quality, and it's turns out to be either some kind of a artificial stone or just not even a base metal, not precious at all, but they've got a quality feel and look, and that's where they establish their credibility.
Yeah. And my personal feeling is influencers are driving this trend, right? Because if the right influencer says, this is quality, this is amazing, people are going to buy it because they trust the influencers. Where, it used to be you get an ad or watch a TV ad. Oh, I might want to buy that or go test drive it. But now the influencers are really running that show and deciding and almost defining what category or a brand pays the right influencer to say that, right? And so it's almost like this has also created demand in a different way. I read a post that a journalist was writing a story about a woman that launched a swimsuit line, and she had no sales and was very discouraged. I'm sure, she did everything right, had a business plan, a website. And so the question was, is this normal? And from my standpoint, you could have the best ads, but if you're in a saturated space, you need influencers to tell people to buy your product, or ambassadors. So I think these influencers have really created a lot of new trends and disrupted the buyer personas. Like, they're almost unpredictable, kind of to, your point about the other product, which is very unique in itself. Well, Mark, do you have any last words of wisdom for anybody that is like, I want to create a luxury brand and sell overpriced products? What do you have any last comments or warnings, like cautionary, like, hey, if you're going to do this, be careful, right? Like, what are your...
I think products go viral for different reasons. And talking about not just to back up just a second for your comment about influencers, it's amazing how much credibility people give influencers. And that's where they came up. Initially, just anybody that was in the public eye was considered an influencer just by accident. You saw somebody from Hollywood carrying a certain purse, wearing a certain watch, wearing a certain jewelry brand, and all of a sudden it'd get tagged and highlighted. And, they didn't maybe mean to, or they bought it on their own, and all of a sudden now they're an influencer. And
Right.
today, I think now most of these influencers, it's strictly a numbers game. How many pieces can they show? How much can they bring in? And if you get when you have these lists of influencers, you see their reach, you see how many posts they're willing to do, you see how much money it is, and how to break it down. Nothing's guaranteed. It's just another avenue of advertising, but there does seem to be some sort of implied credibility that people feel with these influencers.
Yeah,
And, they trust them more than doctors, it seems like. So,
that is true.
I think what's important if somebody wants to build a true luxury brand, a lot of what I do when I do work with these brands is I inspect every aspect of the business with regards to how are you handling customer calls? How do you handle your packaging? What is everything from touch to use and delivery, everything has to be seen, and it's every detail. You have to take diligence with every detail. And that leads to the next level of the credibility and the perception and the implied feel that it is a luxury product, and you're buying something that you get this. If I were to
Yeah.
sell you, a very fine ring and deliver it in a plastic bag and not in a fine jewelry box, then you would think that would be not a luxury product. It's
Right.
all in how
That's
it's all in
true.
how you hand it off.
Yep, I agree. Well, Mark, always a pleasure. And thank you for all the great advice. For everybody watching, this is Under the Brand. I'm your host, Valerie Jennings. Stay tuned for future episodes where we decode other branding mysteries. Thank you again for watching.